The Wyoming sky burns with the last embers of dusk, a crimson glow bleeding into the bruised purple of gathering clouds. Dust swirls in the relentless wind, gritty and unyielding, coating the cracked leather of Jacob Kane's boots as he rides down a trail carved deep by wagon wheels and time. His horse, Rusty, a bay marais with a coat dulled by long miles, snorts softly, her hooves thudding against the parched earth. Jacob sits tall in the saddle, a lean silhouette against the vast, untamed horizon, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes, gray as gunmetal, scan the endless sweep of sagebrush and tumbleweed, always watchful, always wary. He's a man shaped by the land hard-edged, scarred and silent about the ghosts that ride with him. Tucked in his saddlebag, creased and worn, is a letter from a widow named Clara Hawthorne. $50 and a bunk for a season's work on her ranch. It's not salvation, but it's enough to keep him moving, to outrun the echoes of a life. He left in ashes. The Hawthorne ranch appears in the distance, a fragile outpost against the sprawl of the plains. The main house, weathered gray, crouches low, its porch sagging like an old man's shoulders. The barn, once red, now peels and flakes, exposing raw wood to the elements. A windmill looms nearby, its blades creaking in a mournful cadence, turning slow as if weary of the fight. Jacob eases Rusty to a walk, taking in the land's quiet desolation. Scattered cattle graze in the distance, their ribs faintly visible under taut hides. This isn't a thriving spread. It's a place clinging to life, battered by drought and neglect. The silence feels heavy, not peaceful as stillness that hums with unspoken stories. Like the tense pause before a draw, a woman steps onto the porch, her silhouette sharp against the fading light. Clara Hawthorne. She's younger than he'd imagined, no more than 30, with auburn hair pulled into a loose braid that catches the dying sun like a thread of fire. Her dress, faded calico patched at the hem, clings to her frame, practical, yet worn with quiet dignity. She stands with arms crossed, her posture a blend of defiance and bone-deep fatigue. A Winchester rifle rests against the porch rail, its barrel glinting faintly, close enough for her to grab in a heartbeat. Out here. Trust is a luxury, and she's clearly spent hers long ago. You Jacob Kane? Her voice cuts through the dusk, clear and steady, but laced with an edge of suspicion, like she's measuring the man against the trouble he might bring. Jacob swings down from Rusty, his boots hitting the ground with a soft crunch. He tips his hat, a small nod of courtesy. "Ma'am, got your letter." Clara steps off the porch, her boots kicking up faint clouds of dust. She moves with purpose, stopping a few paces away, her green eyes locking on his. They're sharp, those eyes, like a hawk's, searching for cracks in the stranger before her. Up close, he sees the lines etched around her mouth, the faint shadows. Under her eyes, marks of a woman who's fought to hold this land alone. "You don't look like a man who puts down roots," she says, her tone blunt but not unkind. "Don't plan to," Jacob replies, his voice low, roughened by days of dust and solitude. "But I'll give you an honest day's work. That's what you're paying for." She doesn't respond right away, just holds his gaze, her lips pressed into a thin line. The wind tugs at her braid, sending a few strands dancing across her cheek, and for a moment something flickers in her expression, weariness maybe, or the ghost of hope she's too stubborn to name. Then it's gone, replaced by the steel she wears like armor. "Stable your horse," she says, jerking her chin toward the barn. "Supper's at dusk. We'll talk terms over coffee." Jacob nods, taking Rusty's reins and turning toward the barn. He feels her eyes on his back, a weight heavier than the saddle he carries. The barn door groans as he pushes it open, revealing a dim interior thick with the scent of old hay, leather, and neglect. Empty stalls line one wall, their wood splintered and gray. A rusted pitchfork leans in a corner, half buried in straw. And a broken plow sits abandoned, its blade dulled by time. This ranch is a shadow of what it must have been, and Clara's fighting a losing battle to keep it alive. Jacob brushes a hand over Rusty's flank, his jaw tightening. He's seen broken places before, broken people too. He's not here to fix them. He's here to work, to earn his keep, and to move on before the past catches up. Inside the house, Clara stands at the window, her fingers twisting the frayed edge of a curtain. Her heart beats a little too fast, though she'd never admit it. Writing that letter had been an act of desperation, scrawled in the dead of night when the weight of the ranch pressed too hard. Cattle dying, hands drifting off to chase gold. Or greener pastures, creditors circling like vultures. She'd had no choice. But Jacob Kane is a gamble. A drifter with a quiet strength that unsettles her, with eyes that see too much and say too little. She's known men like him, men who promise help but leave wreckage behind. Yet there's something in the way he carries himself, steady and unhurried, that kindles a spark she thought had died with her husband. Maybe he's the man who can save this place. Or maybe she thinks her hand brushing the rifle by the door. He's the kind of trouble that'll burn it all down. Outside, Jacob ties Rusty to a post and pauses, his gaze sweeping the land. The plains stretch endless, their vastness both a promise and a threat. The wind carries the faint lowing of cattle, the creak of the windmill, the whisper of secrets this ranch holds tight. He spent years running from one horizon to the next, but something about this place, the stubborn set of Clara's shoulders, the way the land fights to endure, makes him wonder if he's finally found a reason to stand still. The kitchen glows faintly under the flicker of an oil lamp, its light casting long shadows across the rough-hewn table. The air smells of strong coffee and cornbread fresh from the cast-iron skillet, but there's a tension beneath the warmth, like the hum of a storm gathering far off. Jacob sits across from Clara, his hat resting on the chair beside him, his hands wrapped around a tin mug. The coffee's bitter, but it's hot, and after weeks on the trail, that's enough. Clara sits straight, her braid coiled at the nape of her neck, her eyes fixed on him with the same sharp scrutiny she'd shown outside. The silence between them isn't empty, it's a conversation of glances, each testing the other's measure. "You've worked cattle before?" Clara asks, breaking the quiet. Her voice is steady, but there's a challenge in it, like she's waiting for him to slip. Jacob nods, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Since I was a boy, drove herds from Texas to Kansas. Branded, roped, broke. Horses, whatever you need, I've done it." She leans forward, elbows on the table, her fingers interlaced. "This ain't Texas. The land here's meaner. Drought's taken half my herd, and rustlers are sniffing around what's left. You ever dealt with men who'd steal a woman's livelihood out from under her?" Her words carry a weight heavier than the question. Jacob meets her gaze, his eyes steady, unreadable. "I've dealt with worse than rustlers," he says, his voice low, carrying the faintest edge of something dark, something buried. "You point me at trouble, I'll handle it." Clara's lips twitch, not quite a smile. "Big words, Mr. Kane. We'll see if you can back them up." She rises, moving to the stove to refill her mug, her movements precise but weary. The lamplight catches the curve of her jaw, the faint lines etched by years of loss and stubborn resolve. Jacob watches her, noting the way her hands tremble just slightly as she pours fatigue, not fear. This woman's been fighting alone too long, and the ranch is her anchor, her burden, her everything. He knows that kind of weight. He's carried it himself in different forms, through towns and trails he'd rather forget. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the windows and sending a shiver through the house. Clara glances toward the sound, her expression tightening. "Storm's coming," she says, more to herself than to him. Always does when things start feeling settled. Jacob sets his mug down, the tin clinking softly against the wood. "You expecting trouble tonight?" "Not tonight," she says, turning back to him. "But soon. There's a man, Amos Creed, owns the spread north of here. Thinks this land should be his. Been pushing me to sell since my husband died." Her voice catches on the word husband, just for a moment before she hardens it again. He's not the kind to ask twice. Jacob leans back, his chair creaking. "And you're not the kind to bend." She meets his eyes, and for the first time there's a spark of something like respect. "No, I'm not." The conversation shifts to practicalities, headcounts of cattle, fences needing repair, the water supply dwindling in the creek. Jacob listens, his mind already mapping the work ahead. But part of him is elsewhere, caught on the way Clara's hands move when she talks. Strong and sure, yet marked with calluses that tell a story of their own. She's not just fighting for the ranch. She's fighting for herself, for the life she's carved out of this unforgiving land. He knows that fight too well, and it stirs something in him, a pull he hasn't felt in years. As supper ends, Clara leads him to a small room off the barn, a bunk with a thin mattress and a single blanket. "It's not much," she says, handing him a lantern, "but it's dry." "More than I'm used to," Jacob replies, his voice softer now, almost gentle. He steps into the room, the lantern's glow illuminating rough walls and a single window facing the plains. The wind outside moans, tearing the faint howl of a coyote, and he feels the land's pulse, alive and restless, as if it's whispering warnings of its own. Clara lingers in the doorway, her shadow stretching long across the floor. "You got a reason for drifting, Mr. Kane?" she asks, her tone quieter now, almost curious. "Man like you doesn't end up here by chance." Jacob sets the lantern down, his back to her, his hands pausing on the strap of his saddlebag. For a moment he's somewhere else, smoke curling from a burning cabin. The echo of a woman's scream, the weight of a choice he can't undo. "No reason worth telling," he says finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just the road." She nods as if she expected nothing more and turns to leave. But at the threshold she pauses, glancing back. "This place has a way of making men face what they're running from. Be ready for that." As her footsteps fade, Jacob sits on the bunk, the springs creaking under his weight. He pulls the letter from his pocket, unfolding it to read her neat, determined script again. The words are simple, practical, but they carry a quiet plea. This ranch, this woman, they're more than a job. They're a tether, pulling him toward something he's not sure he's ready to face. Outside, the wind howls louder, and the plains stretch dark and endless, watching, waiting, as if they know the storm isn't just in the sky. Dawn breaks over the Wyoming plains, a thin gold line splitting the darkness like a blade. The air is crisp, heavy with the scent of dew-soaked sagebrush and the faint musk of cattle. Jacob Kane stands at the edge of the corral, his breath visible. In the chill, his hands resting on the splintered fence. The ranch stirs slowly, chickens clucking in their coop, the windmill creaking its endless lament. Behind him, the barn looms, its weathered boards glowing faintly in the first light. He's already been up an hour, checking the horses, sharpening tools dulled by neglect. The work feels good, grounding, a way to quiet the restless thoughts that prowled his dreams last night. Smoke and screams, and Clara's voice, sharp and searching, asking questions he can't answer. Clara emerges from the house, a shawl draped over her shoulders, a tin bucket swinging in one hand. Her braid is loose this morning, strands framing her face, softening the hard lines of her jaw. She moves with purpose, heading toward the co-op, but her eyes flick to Jacob, noting his presence. "You're up early," she says, her voice carrying across the yard, warm but guarded. "Habit," Jacob replies, turning to face her. His duster is dusted with frost, his hat tipped low against the rising sun. "Figured I'd start with the fences today. South pasture's a mess." She nods, setting the bucket down by the coop. "Good. Been meaning to get to it, but—" She stops, her lips pressing thin, as if the weight of all she hasn't done is too heavy to speak. Instead, she straightens, brushing her hands on her apron. "Coffee's on if you want it." He tips his hat in thanks but doesn't move, his gaze drifting to the horizon where the plains roll unbroken, their vastness both a promise and a cage. The land feels alive this morning, its silence thrumming with secrets as if it's waiting for something to break. Jacob's no stranger to that feeling. He's felt it in saloons before a fight, in the quiet before a stampede. Out here, though, it's different, deeper, like the land itself is holding its breath. The morning passes in a rhythm of labor. Jacob rides out to the south pasture, Rusty's hooves kicking up clouds of dust. The fence is worse than he thought. Posts rotted, wire sagging, gaps wide enough for cattle to wander. He works steadily, prying out old posts, driving new ones deep into the earth, his muscles burning with the effort. Sweat beads under his hat, but he doesn't pause, driven by a need to prove something, not just to Clara, but to himself. This ranch, with its stubborn fight to survive, stirs memories he's tried to bury, a homestead he once called his own, a life he lost to fire and blood. He shakes the thought away, focusing on the hammer in his hand, the satisfying thud of wood meeting earth. Back at the ranch, Clara tends to the chores, her hands moving through familiar motions, feeding the chickens, hauling water from the dwindling creek, but her mind is elsewhere, snagged on the stranger working her land. Jacob's quiet competence unsettles her, not because she doubts his skill, but because it makes her feel something she hasn't in years: reliance. She's been alone since Tom died, carrying the ranch on her shoulders, refusing to bend under its weight. Trusting a man, even one who works as hard as Jacob, feels like stepping onto thin ice. Yet she can't deny the relief of seeing the fence line rise again, the barn's loose boards nailed tight. It's a start, a fragile one, but a start. Midday brings a visitor, the clatter of hooves announcing trouble before it arrives. A rider crests the hill, a broad man in a black coat, his horse sleek and well-fed, a stark contrast to the lean cattle grazing nearby. Amos Creed. Clara steps onto the porch, her rifle in hand, her posture rigid. Jacob, back from the pasture for water, pauses by the pump, his hand resting near the revolver at his hip. He doesn't know the man, but he knows the type: predatory, cloaked in charm, the kind who takes what he wants and calls it justice. "Morning, Clara," Amos calls, reining in his horse. His voice is smooth, but his eyes are cold, flicking from her to Jacob with a calculating glint. "Heard you hired help? Didn't think you had the coin for it?" "None of your concern, Amos," Clara says, her tone sharp as a blade. "What do you want?" He dismounts, his boots hitting the ground with deliberate weight. "Just checking on my neighbor. Word is, rustlers hit the Miller spread last night. Took 20 head. Thought you'd want to know, seeing as your herd's looking mighty thin." Clara's jaw tightens, but she doesn't flinch. "I can handle my own." Amos smirks, stepping closer, his shadow falling across the porch. "Sure you can. But this land's too much for one woman. Sell to me, Clara. I'll give you a fair price, let you walk away with something." Jacob steps forward, his voice low, steady. "Lady said she's not selling." Amos turns, sizing him up, his smirk fading into something harder. "And who are you, drifter? Her hired hand, or something else?" "Doesn't matter," Jacob says, his eyes locked on Amos, unyielding. "You heard her, right on." The air crackles with tension, the kind that precedes blood. Amos holds Jacob's gaze, his hand twitching near his gun, but Clara's rifle shifts slightly, a quiet warning. Amos chuckles, raising his hands in mock surrender. "No need for that. Just being neighborly." He mounts his horse, tipping his hat to Clara. "Think on my offer, won't make it again." As Amos rides off, Clara lowers the rifle, her hands trembling now, not from fear but rage. Jacob watches her, noting the fire in her eyes, the way she holds herself together despite the cracks. "He'll be back," he says. "Not a question, but a fact." "He always is," Clara replies, her voice tight. She turns to him, her expression unreadable. "You didn't have to step in." "Didn't have to," Jacob agrees, "but I did." For a moment their eyes meet, and something unspoken passes between them, a flicker of trust, fragile as a spark in the wind. Clara nods, then heads back to the house, her steps brisk as if motion can outrun the fear gnawing at her heart. Jacob returns to the pump, splashing water on his face, the cold shocking his skin. Amos Creed is trouble, the kind that doesn't stop at words. And Jacob knows, deep in his bones, that staying here means facing not just Creed, but the shadows he's been running from for years. The plains stretch silent around them, their vastness a witness to the storm brewing, not in the sky, but in the hearts of two people bound by a land that demands everything they have. Twilight cloaks the Wyoming plains, the sky a deep indigo stitched with stars that gleam like scattered silver. The air carries a bite sharp with the promise of frost, and the scent of dry grass mingles with the faint tang of wood smoke drifting from the ranch house chimney. Jacob Kane leans against the corral fence, his eyes scanning the dark horizon where the land melts into shadow. Rusty grazes nearby, her tail swishing softly. But Jacob's focus is on the quiet, not the peaceful kind, but the uneasy hush that settles before trouble rides in. His revolver rests heavy at his hip, cleaned and loaded since Amos Creed's visit 2 days ago. The man's words linger like a bad taste, and Jacob knows men like Creed don't make threats they won't keep. Inside the house, Clara kneels by the hearth, feeding split logs to the fire. The flames crackle, casting a warm glow across her face, but her hands pause, her thoughts tangled. Jacob's been a steady presence these past days, mending fences, herding stray cattle, working from dawn to dusk without complaint. He's more than she'd hoped for, but that scares her. Reliance is a dangerous thing out here, where the land takes more than it gives. She thinks of Tom, his laughter, his calloused hands, the way he'd promised her this ranch would be there forever. Now, with Jacob's shadow moving through the same spaces, she feels a stirring she's not ready to name, a mix of gratitude, guilt, and something warmer, deeper. That catches her off guard. A sharp crack splits the night, not thunder but gunfire, distant yet unmistakable. Jacob straightens, his hand dropping to his gun, his body coiled like a spring. Clara's on her feet in an instant, grabbing the rifle from its place by the door. She steps onto the porch, her breath clouding in the cold, her eyes meeting Jacob's. Across the yard, "Rustlers," she says, her voice low, taut with certainty. "They're hitting the north pasture." Jacob nods, already moving toward Rusty. "Stay here, lock the door." "Not a chance," Clara snaps, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. "This is my land, I'm coming." He opens his mouth to argue, but the fire in her eyes stops him cold. She's not just defending her ranch, she's defending herself, her past, her future. He respects that, even if it twists something in his gut. "Stay close then," he says, swinging into the saddle. Clara mounts her own horse, a sturdy roan named Sage, and they ride out. The pounding of hooves swallowed by the vastness of the plains. The north pasture is a mile off, a stretch of rolling land where Clara's remaining herd grazes. The moon hangs low, its pale light glinting off the hides of cattle scattering in panic. Shadows move among them, 3, maybe 4 men, their horses weaving through the herd, lassos snapping. Gunshots crack again, one cow dropping with a bellow, the rest stampeding toward the hills. Jacob pulls Rusty to a halt behind a rise, Clara beside him, her face set hard as stone. "Plan?" she whispers, her rifle already raised. "Flank 'em," Jacob says, his voice calm but edged with steel. "I'll draw their fire from the left. You take the right, aim for their horses. No killing unless we have to." She nods, her jaw tight. And they split, moving low and fast through the sagebrush. Jacob circles left, his heart steady despite the adrenaline singing in his veins. He's done this before, hunted men who thought the dark would hide them, but this time it's not just survival. It's Clara's livelihood, her fight, and he's in it deeper than he planned. A rustler spots him, shouting a curse, and a bullet whistles past, kicking up dirt. Jacob fires back, aiming low, and a horse rears, throwing its rider. Clara's rifle cracks from the right, precise and controlled, and another horse bolts, its rider scrambling to follow. The rustlers falter, caught off guard by the resistance, and Jacob seizes the moment, charging forward, his voice booming, "Drop your guns or the next one's through your chest." To comply, tossing their weapons into the dust, their hands raised. The third, a wiry man with a scarred face, hesitates, his eyes darting toward the hills. Clara steps into the moonlight, her rifle trained on him, her voice cold as the night. "Don't test me." He drops his gun, spitting into the dirt, and Jacob binds their hands with rawhide from his saddlebag. The cattle mill about, they're lowing a mournful chorus, but most are still here, saved by the quick fight. Clara's chest heaves, her eyes blazing with a mix of relief and fury. She turns to Jacob, her voice low. "You didn't have to risk your neck for this." "Wasn't just your neck on the line," he says, meeting her gaze. The moonlight catches the sweat on his brow, the quiet intensity in his eyes. And for a moment, the world narrows to just them. The plain silent witnesses to something shifting. They heard the bound rustlers back to the ranch, locking them in. The barn under guard until morning, when they'll ride to town for the sheriff. Clara leans against the barn door, her rifle at her side, her breath slowing. "They're Creed's men," she says, not a question but a certainty. "He's testing me." Jacob nods, wiping dust from his hands. "He'll do more than test. Next time." She looks at him, her expression softening, just a fraction. "You're still here." Most men would have ridden off by now. He shrugs, but his eyes hold hers, steady and unguarded for the first time. "Maybe I'm not most men." Clara doesn't reply, but the corner of her mouth lifts, a ghost of a smile. She turns toward the house, the night wrapping around her like a cloak, but her steps are lighter, as if some weight has shifted, if only for a moment. Jacob watches her go, his hand resting on Rusty's flank, the plains stretching dark and endless around him. The land feels heavier tonight, its secrets pressing closer, whispering that this fight the rustlers, Creed, Clara is pulling him toward a reckoning he can't outrun. The Wyoming dawn spills gold across the plains, softening the harsh edges of the Hawthorne ranch. The air is sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth, a rare reprieve after last night's chaos. The barn looms quiet now, its doors barred. The captured rustlers inside awaiting the sheriff's arrival. Jacob Kane stands by the corral, tightening Rusty's saddle, his hands moving with the steady rhythm of a man used to hard days. His face is shadowed under his hat, but his eyes carry a new weight, a flicker of something unresolved since the gunfire in the north pasture. The fight wasn't just about cattle, it was a line drawn in the dust, and he's crossed it, tying himself to Clara's battle in a way he hadn't planned. Clara steps from the house, her shawl pulled tight against the morning chill, a basket of biscuits tucked under her arm. She's headed for the barn to feed the prisoners, but her gaze finds Jacob first, lingering on the way he works, deliberate, unhurried, like the land itself has seeped into his bones. She hesitates, then crosses the yard, her boots crunching on frost-kissed grass. "Sheriff will be here by noon," she says, stopping a few paces away. "You didn't sign up for this kind of trouble." Jacob glances up, his hands pausing on the saddle. "Trouble's got a way of finding me," he says, his voice low, tinged with a wryness that doesn't quite hide the truth. "Besides, those men would have bled you dry. Couldn't stand by and watch." Clara sets the basket down, her hands finding her hips. "You're not what I expected, Jacob Kane." Her tone is softer now, almost curious, and her eyes search his face, looking for the man behind the drifter's mask. "Most men out here are either running from something or chasing something. Which are you?" He doesn't answer right away, his gaze drifting to the horizon where the plains stretch endless, their vastness a mirror to the questions he's dodged for years. "Bit of both, I reckon," he says finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "What about you? This ranch, it's more than just land to you." Clara's lips press thin, her fingers tightening on her shawl. "It's all I've got left," she says, the words raw, like they've been pulled from a place she keeps locked tight. "Tom built this place with me, dreamed it'd be our legacy. Now it's just me holding on to what's left of him." Jacob nods, understanding more than he says. He's known loss, the kind that carves out a piece of you and leaves it bleeding. He wants to ask about Tom, about the man who shaped this woman's fire, but the words feel too heavy, too intimate. Instead, he picks up a coil of rope, tossing it over his shoulder. "Come on," he says, jerking his head toward the barn. "Let's get those men fed before the sheriff hauls them off." They work together in quiet rhythm, Clara passing biscuits. Through the barn's barred window, Jacob keeping watch, his revolver close. The rustlers mutter curses but eat hungrily, their eyes darting between their captors. One, the scarred man from last night, sneers at Clara. "Creed's gonna burn this place down, lady." "You're fighting a losing war." Clara's face doesn't change, but her hand tightens on the basket, her knuckles white. "Tell Creed he'll have to try harder," she says, her voice cold as iron. Jacob steps closer, his presence a silent warning, and the man falls silent, turning away. Later, as the sun climbs higher, they ride out to check the herd, the plains unfolding around them in waves of golden grass and shadowed hills. The cattle are skittish, still spooked from the night before, and Jacob works with quiet skill, guiding strays back with a gentle nudge of Rusty's flank. Clara rides beside him, her posture easing as they move through the open land. The silence between them is different now, not tense but comfortable. Like two people learning the shape of each other's presence. At a creek bed, they pause to water the horses. Clara dismounts, kneeling to splash water on her face, the droplets catching the sunlight like tiny stars. Jacob watches her, struck by the way she carries herself, fierce and fragile all at once. A woman who's fought to keep her heart whole. "You're good with the herd," she says, glancing up, her voice carrying a rare warmth. "Better than most hands I've had." "Had a lot of practice," Jacob says, leaning against a tree, its bark rough under his hand. "Used to run a spread of my own down in Colorado." The words slip out before he can stop them, and he feels the weight of them. Heavy with memories he's kept buried. Clara straightens, her eyes narrowing with interest. "What happened to it?" He looks away, his jaw tightening. The creek gurgles softly, its sound a faint echo of a life he lost. "Fire," he says at last, his voice rough. "Bandits hit one night. Took everything stock home, my wife." He stops, the words cutting deeper than he expected. "Been moving ever since." Clara's face softens, her guard dropping like a curtain pulled aside. "I'm sorry," she says, and the sincerity in her voice catches him off guard. She steps closer, her hand brushing his arm, a fleeting touch that feels like a spark in the dry air. "I know what it's like to lose everything you thought was yours." For a moment they stand there, the creek's murmur and the wind's sigh the only sounds. The plains stretch around them, vast and unyielding, their beauty a quiet witness to the shared pain that binds them. Jacob meets her eyes, seeing not just the widow fighting for her ranch, but a woman who understands the ache of starting over. He wants to say something, to bridge the gap between them, but the sound of hooves cuts through the moment. A rider approaches. Not the sheriff, but one of Creed's men, his horse kicking up dust. He pulls up short, his face hard. "Creed wants a word," Clara says. "You've got till sundown tomorrow to take his offer, or he'll take this land himself." Clara's back stiffens, her fire returning. "Tell him I'm not scared of his threats." The rider smirks, his eyes flicking to Jacob. "Better watch your hired hand, lady." Creed don't like meddlers. He wheels his horse and rides off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Jacob watches him go, his hand resting on his gun. "He's not bluffing," he says, his voice low. "Creed's got the men and the money to back it up." Clara turns to him, her eyes fierce but steady. "Then we'll be ready. I'm not losing this place, Jacob. Not to him." He nods, feeling the weight of her resolve, and something else, a pull to stand by her, not just as a hired hand, but as something more. The plains seem to hum with it, their vastness holding its breath, as if they know the fight ahead will test not just their strength, but their hearts. The Wyoming sun blazes high, its heat pressing down on the Hawthorne ranch like a heavy hand. The plains shimmer with haze, the air thick with the scent of dry grass and the faint metallic tang of dust. Jacob Kane works in the yard, hammering nails into a new fence post, his shirt damp with sweat, his movements steady but urgent. The ultimatum from Amos Creed hangs over the ranch like a storm cloud sundown today, or he'll take the land by force. The sheriff came and went, hauling the rustlers to town, but his promises of help were thin, worn out by Creed's influence. Jacob knows this fight is theirs alone, and the weight of it settles deep in his chest, stirring memories of a night long ago when he failed to protect what mattered most. Clara stands on the porch, her rifle cleaned and loaded, her eyes scanning the horizon where the plains roll unbroken toward Creed's land. Her braid is tucked under a wide-brimmed hat, her dress swapped for a practical shirt and trousers, the kind she wore when she and Tom used to ride the herd together. She's not just preparing for a fight, she's reclaiming her place, her strength, her right to this land. But her gaze keeps drifting to Jacob, his quiet resolve anchoring her in a way she hadn't expected. He's more than a hired hand now. Though she's not ready to name what he's become, Jacob pauses, wiping his brow, and catches her watching. "You should stay inside when they come," he says, his voice low, carrying across the yard. "Let me handle this." Clara steps off the porch, her boots kicking up dust as she closes the distance between them. "This is my fight, Jacob. You don't get to decide where I stand." Her tone is firm, but there's a warmth in her eyes, a gratitude she doesn't voice. He sets the hammer down, meeting her gaze. I'm not trying to decide for you. Just don't want you hurt. Her lips part as if to argue, but something in his voice, raw, unguarded, stops her. For a moment they stand close, the air between them charged, like the moment before lightning. Clara's hand brushes his sleeve, a fleeting touch that lingers in the heat. I don't want you hurt either, she says softly. The words a confession she hadn't meant to make. Before Jacob can respond, the distant thud of hooves cuts through the quiet. They turn as one, spotting a cloud of dust rising from the North Riders. At least 6, their silhouettes sharp against the glaring sun. Creed's men. Jacob's hand drops to his revolver, his body tensing, while Clara grips her rifle. Her jaw set like iron, the plains seem to hold their breath. The wind falling silent, the land itself watching as the riders draw closer. Amos. Creed leads them, his black coat flapping like a vulture's wings, his face set in a smug grin. He reins in his horse at the edge of the yard, his men fanning out behind him, their hands resting on guns. Time's up, Clara, he calls, his voice smooth but laced with menace. Sell now or we take it, your choice. Clara steps forward, her rifle raised, her voice steady as stone. This land's mine, Amos. You'll have to kill me to get it. Creed's grin widens, but his eyes are cold, flicking to Jacob. And your drifter here? He worth dying for this patch of dirt? Jacob moves to Clara's side, his revolver drawn, his voice calm but lethal. You're not taking anything today, Creed. Ride out, or you won't ride back. The tension cracks like a whip. One of Creed's men twitches, his hand going for his gun, and the world explodes into chaos. Jacob fires first, his bullet grazing the man's shoulder, sending him tumbling from his horse. Clara's rifle roars, dropping another man's mount, the horse screaming as it bolts. The yard erupts in gunfire, bullets kicking up dirt, splintering, wood shattering the quiet of the ranch. Jacob and Clara move as one, ducking behind the corral, their shots precise, driven by a shared resolve. The plains echo with the chaos, their vastness amplifying every sound. As if the land itself is roaring, Creed's men falter. Unprepared for the fight in Clara's eyes, the steel in Jacob's aim. 2 more fall, wounded but alive, and the others break, retreating into the dust, Creed's curses trailing behind them. He wheels his horse, his face twisted with rage. This ain't over, Clara. He shouts, then spurs away, his men limping after him. The dust settles, the air heavy with the smell of gunpowder. Clara lowers her rifle, her hands trembling now, her breath ragged. Jacob holsters his gun, his eyes scanning her for wounds, relief flooding him when he sees she's unharmed. You all right? He asks, his voice rough with concern. She nods, but her eyes are wide, the adrenaline still coursing through her. You stayed, she says, almost a whisper, as if she can't quite believe it. You could have run. Jacob steps closer, his hand reaching out, hesitating, then resting gently on her shoulder. Not running this time, he says, his voice soft but sure. Not from you. Clara's breath catches, her eyes searching his, finding something she's been afraid to hope. FOR. The space between them shrinks, and for a heartbeat, it's just them, their shared fight, their shared scars, the plains stretching silent around them. She leans into his touch, just slightly, her hand brushing his, a quiet promise in the gesture. The land seems to sigh, its vastness softening as if it knows this moment is a turning point. A tether binding them closer than words can say as they turn back to the ranch. The sun dips low, painting the sky in hues of fire. The house stands. Battered but unbroken, its walls holding the echoes of their stand. Jacob and Clara walk side by side, their shadows merging on the dusty ground. The weight of the fight settling into something new, a partnership forged in fire, a bond the land itself seems to bless. The Wyoming plains glow under a late afternoon sun, its golden light spilling across the Hawthorne ranch like a promise kept. The air hums with the scent of blooming sagebrush and the faint sweetness of rain-soaked earth, a rare gift after weeks. Drought. The barn stands straighter now, its new boards gleaming, and the corral fence is solid, a testament to Jacob Kane's steady hands. The land feels different today, alive, hopeful, as if it's exhaled after holding its breath through the long fight. But a shadow lingers, the threat of Amos Creed still coiled like a rattlesnake, waiting to strike. Clara stands in the yard, her hair loose, catching the light like burnished copper. She's in her best dress, a simple blue calico, its hem swaying in the breeze. Her eyes are on the horizon, where dust clouds signal riders approaching, not with menace this time, but with purpose. The sheriff rides at the head, flanked by a posse of townsfolk, their faces grim but resolute. Word of Creed's threats spread fast, and the town, tired of his greed, has rallied to Clara's side. She grips a letter in her hand, a deed signed and notarized, proving her claim to the land beyond dispute. It's her shield, her victory, but it's Jacob's presence that steadies her heart. Jacob steps from the barn, his duster traded for a clean shirt, his revolver still at his hip. He's been working since dawn, not just on the ranch, but on something deeper, a future he hadn't dared imagine until now. He crosses to Clara, his boots crunching softly, and stands beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "You ready for this?" he asks, his voice low, carrying the quiet strength she's come to rely on. Clara nods, her lips curving in a small, determined smile. "Ready as I'll ever be." This ends today. The riders halt at the edge of the yard, the sheriff dismounting with a nod to Clara. "Creed's coming," he says, his voice gruff. Caught wind he's planning to make good on his threat. "But we've got your back, Mrs. Hawthorne. This land's yours." Before Clara can respond, hoofbeats thunder again, louder, angrier. Amos Creed rides in, alone this time, his black coat streaked with dust, his face a mask of fury. He pulls up short, his horse snorting, and glares at the posse, then at Clara. "You think a piece of paper and a few farmers will stop me?" He snarls, his hand hovering near his gun. Jacob steps forward, his body a quiet wall between Clara and Creed. "It's not just paper," he says, his voice calm but edged with steel. "It's her right, and you're done here." Creed's eyes narrow, his hand twitching, but the sheriff's voice cuts through. "Stand down, Amos. You're outnumbered, and the law's on her side. Push this and you'll hang." The moment stretches taut, the plains silent, their vastness bearing witness. Creed's gaze darts from Jacob to Clara, then to the posse, their rifles glinting in the sun. His jaw tightens, and with a curse he wheels his horse, riding off into the dust, his shadow swallowed by the horizon. The land seems to sigh, its tension easing as if it's finally free. Clara exhales, her shoulders relaxing, the deed still clutched in her hand. The sheriff tips his hat, promising to keep watch, and the posse disperses, leaving the ranch bathed in the soft glow of dusk. Jacob turns to Clara, his eyes searching hers. "It's over," he says, but there's a question in his voice. Hope he's afraid to name." Clara shakes her head, a spark in her eyes. "Not over, just beginning." She steps closer, her hand finding his, her fingers warm against his calloused palm. "You didn't just save this ranch, Jacob. You gave me a reason to believe in something again." He looks down at their joined hands, his heart pounding in a way no gunfight ever caused. "Clara, I've been running a long time. Lost everything. Once. Didn't think I'd find a place to stop." He pauses, his voice softening. "But this land, it's home, if you'll have me." Her breath catches, tears brimming but not falling. She nods, a smile breaking through, radiant as the dawn. "I will, Jacob Kane, I will." Weeks later, the ranch is transformed. Not just by repaired fences and a growing herd, but by a quiet joy that lingers in the air. The townsfolk gather under a cottonwood tree, its leaves rustling in the breeze, as Clara and Jacob stand before a preacher. Her dress is simple, his shirt pressed, but their eyes hold a vow deeper than words. The plains stretch around them, golden and endless, their beauty a silent blessing as the preacher speaks of love and endurance. They exchange rings playing bands forged from hope, and the crowd cheers, their voices carrying across the land. As the sun sets, painting the sky in hues of fire and rose, Jacob and Clara stand hand in hand, the ranch house glowing behind them. The land feels alive, its heartbeat steady, as if it's woven their story into its soil. Clara leans into Jacob, her voice soft. "We built something here, didn't we?" He smiles, a rare, unguarded warmth in his eyes. Yeah, we did. The stars emerge, bright against the darkening sky, and the plains hum with the promise of a new day. This land, this love, this fight, it's theirs, forever etched into the heart of Wyoming. And if this story stirred your heart, if the plains and their people spoke to you, hit that like button, subscribe for more tales of the wild, and share your thoughts below. What's a fight you faced, a love you found? Let's keep the story going.